Greetings, everyone. I'm Brian Zaff, the founder and CEO of Flight Financial, and joining me today is Ariel Camus, the founder and CEO of Microverse. Welcome, Ariel.
Welcome, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, I really appreciate the time. Microverse seems like a really cool company. So would love to start off if you could just share a bit about what Microverse does, how you built the company and what you love about leading it.
Absolutely. So we are a school that trains people from all around the world. We have students in 129 countries today. Today, we train people as software engineers, but we train them specifically to work remotely and internationally so that they're not limited by their local markets and opportunities. And we don't charge anything up front. We are the only school, university, bootcamp in the world that offers an income share agreement that is available worldwide. And that's why we believe that the place where you are born shouldn't determine your opportunities in life. And we designed the model, we reinvented how people are learning to make it work for people that no one is paying attention to in Latin America, in Africa, Southeast Asia, and so on.
And a lot of your graduates, it seems like this really changes the game for them after they make it through your program.
Yeah, we have right now a 96% job placement rate within 6 months of completing the program. And the average salary increase for one of our graduates, it's a 300%.
Wow, that's incredible.
So yeah, it's by design, right? So I can tell you a little bit more about this, how this came to be and why, what I saw that triggered me to want to do something about this, if you want.
Yeah, that would be great if you could tell us more about the mission.
Yeah, so it started with a trip to Burundi in East Africa, right after the acquisition of my previous company. And I took a month to do something different, to explore what I wanted to do next with my life. And I spent that month teaching in a University of Computer Science in a really small, tiny town, and seeing all these people who were in the opposite extreme when it comes to accessing opportunities compared to the place where I was coming from in San Francisco, California, where companies are going nuts to find talent and paying absurd salaries. I had just sold my last company for millions of dollars just because the other company wanted to hire a few people in my team. So it was an acqui-hire that it's just ridiculous that we are wasting so much human potential. The companies are not accessing that human potential, that the world, that we have so many challenges to solve and we're missing all that human talent. So to me, it seemed inevitable that we're going to have to fix that. And when I made it back to San Francisco, I met the founder of GitLab, Sid Randy. And when I saw what he was doing with GitLab, with everybody working remotely, and this is 5, 6 years before the pandemic started, right? It blew my mind how he was able to hire more people, more diverse, happier people, retaining them for much longer than other companies, driving more innovation, all of this hiring in every corner in the world. And it just clicked and I realized this is it. Remote work will become the bridge between talent and opportunities. But he also showed me that in order to make a company like GitLab work and to be a successful team member of a company like GitLab, the skills that you need to have, sure, you need to be a good developer, good designer, product manager, but you also need to be a really good communicator. You need to be really good at writing. You need to be good at asynchronous communication. You need to be good working across time zones. You need to be good working with people from very different accents and religions and cultures and whatnot. So these all require more than just an innovation to be able to teach coding at scale, at a world class level. We also were going to have to teach the skills to work remotely and internationally. And that was the moment. And especially, being an immigrant myself, where, I was born in Argentina, I migrated to Europe when I was 12, it seems so connected to the story of my life. And it made me think about how my life would have been if I had stayed, if my parents hadn't emigrated to Europe, which was not an easy process. And that's how the vision for Microverse came to be, where the vision is that the place where you're born shouldn't determine your opportunities in life. And our mission is to provide education to people in a way that leads to outcomes that will connect them with global opportunities so that the place where they're born doesn't determine their opportunities.
It sounds like a really rewarding mission too. And not only is the mission itself unique, but the way that you're approaching it sounds pretty unique too. It sounds like there's a couple other companies out there doing kind of this income, sharing approach, but you guys, it sounds like are doing more of a peer-to-peer model.
Yeah, that's a great question, because the income share agreement is not the innovation, right? It's an amazing new mechanism with its pros and cons, but that is not defensible, that is not unique. What's unique, it's the thing that allows us to do an income sharing agreement globally. There's no other school, university, or bootcamp doing it for a reason, right? It's too risky. The margins to take that risk are not there. Our approach, because we needed to offer this kind of education in a way that was accessible and affordable, we couldn't charge up front, but we still wanted like a world-class education. So how do you get the best of both worlds? And the solution that I stumbled upon in my research was this idea of peer-to-peer learning, collaborative education, cooperative education, where you don't have teachers and you don't have necessarily like lecturers and classes. What you have are teams building projects in a way that mimics a real remote international job, but 100% of the learning is happening within this collaborative environment of students learning from and with each other. And what this does is that on one hand, it makes the approach much more scalable so you can impact more people, right? Secondly, it allows you to lower the cost of education because you don't depend on hiring, training, and retaining teachers all the time in order to be able to scale. But because you have an environment where the entire learning is happening around students learning from and with each other, if those students are coming from all around the world, then it's the perfect environment to teach people not just how to code, but also how to work with people who are very different to them in a multicultural remote setting. So what it does is it allows people, by the time they finish the program, to get jobs that are not local jobs, but jobs that are international jobs that pay them much more, right? And because education is not a cost, or shouldn't be seen as a cost, should be seen as an investment. When you make the decision as a student, you think, what am I going to get in exchange for this kind of investment in my education? On the first hand, we are do risk in this because we are not making a good salary. You don't pay anything. But secondly, because of all the international experience you get in your training, you have access to much higher salaries. Because of that, we can charge more for this education than a local bootcamp. And when you have a lower cost model with a higher pricing point, you have higher margins, and higher margins is what allows you to do crazy stuff that no one else is doing, like offering an income share agreement.
It makes a lot of sense, but I would imagine too, it probably adds a little bit of risk that maybe if you're trying to raise, institutional capital, you probably have to have a pretty good pitch for how you're addressing. I guess from a forecasting perspective, and then, obviously, the social impact of this is very important. But how do you balance that social impact with the need for yourself and for investors to be able to make a return on that investment?
I feel like we can talk about only that question for an hour and a half. So I'll try to make it short. Absolutely. And, being a mission-driven organization doesn't mean that you're not a business at the end of the day. And there is an important working capital challenge of investing thousands of dollars up front that you're only going to get back if they're successful, and minimum at least a year later. So a couple of important things here. Number one is knowing exactly who you can help today, not trying to help everybody. If you try to help everybody, you end up hurting yourself and everybody, right? This is key on building any product. When the success of your business depends on being able to successfully and predictable help a given person, this is super important. And this starts with admissions. We receive between 20 to 30,000 applicants per month to the school. And our cohorts right now that starts like once a month are of 150 to 200 people, right? So wow. You have a selection rate that is below 1%. And that is because we select people with tons of potential and commitment to this challenge of becoming an international software engineer. The second thing is that it's not enough to do that in admissions. You also have to do it while you're in the program. And it's really hard as a human being who has been attracted to join Microverse because of the mission of the company. That's the main thing we filter for when we select candidates for employees. I mean, it's really hard to have to say, sorry, I know you're really committed as a student, but because you can no longer work full-time as a student, we have to let you go from the school, right? When you know that individual has a lot of potential, it's really hard to make that decision. So we had to invest a lot in productizing all those processes. To give you an example, we have integrations with the Zoom API, and we have access to like their participation in their meetings. And like if they're joining, if they're being punctual, if they're participating, if their cameras and microphones are on, if they have internet connection issues. And we have designed all the automation so that based on that, we can provide corrective feedback and we can act very quickly if that doesn't get improved pretty quickly and take people out of the program. Of course, they can rejoin later, but in a way that we know whoever is in the program is at this full level of commitment, which means you are spending at least 8 hours a day within the program hours actively working with your peers. And the moment your life doesn't support you to do that, then you're asked to leave, and then you can come back later once you can do that. Doing that well has been really key and really hard. But once we cracked that, scaling the program became way easier. Now, the beautiful thing, but it's also really hard to do, is that you also need a lot of predictability on your KPI. So you need to know this person starts, by this point, this person will end, by this point, they will get a job and they will start paying back. Once you have that predictability, which we have today, then you're less worried about the next 12 months and you start thinking about 18 to 24 months away for forecasting purposes and for, attracting the working capital. And you have to start doing things that are different. So you can't depend on venture capital anymore. That will be a very expensive, dilutive way of, financing that working capital. So you start putting together special purpose vehicles, start putting together funds where you pull together income share agreements. And what you're doing basically is you are getting loans on behalf of the students who couldn't get the loans themselves for this kind of education. So you're basically using this income share agreement as an intermediary, but you are taking the risk on the students, which means your incentives are aligned with theirs. And at that point, of course, to the investor, you need to start telling them, hey, here is the data that shows this predictability so that we know this student that is here is going to be here at this point. Here's all the data to back this up. So the financial innovation side of things is as complex as the pedagogical side of it, the innovation.
That makes a lot of sense. And you must have hit on it, like, I guess, the right formula here, because from my research, it looks like you guys have raised over $33 million to date from the VCs. So it sounds like while you've got the kind of the ISA funding approach starting to kick in, you're also still able to tap into that institutional capital.
I think, by the way, the Crunchbase data is incorrect. We have raised around 17 million so far.
17, okay.
We closed our Series A in May, June of 2021 last year. But things are looking really good. We're growing fast. The scalability and the operationalization of the entire business model is working really well. So now we're starting conversations for Series B, and things are looking pretty well. But it's always, innovating on one thing, it's hard. Innovating on two, it's harder. So sure. Definitely, like, this is by far the most complex thing that I've done in my life. And I always say that the beautiful thing, and this was an intentional decision when choosing which kind of company to start, is finding a company that can stimulate your heart and your brain in equal parts, and in the short term and in the long term in equal parts. Because while we have this mission of training 1 million people in the next 8 years, right now we're doubling the number of students we impact every year to get there. While we have that long-term mission, I always say that even when one student gets a job and I have the chance to have a conversation with them or with their families, and I see the mom with a big smile saying how grateful they are, I don't care if we get to 1 million people. That one person already gave me the purpose that I need to keep going. And having both those types of intellectual and hard, short-term, long-term satisfaction from a job, it's really hard to find.
I would completely agree with that. And I would say too, that just in light of everything that's happened with COVID-19 and the great resignation and reshuffling, people are really taking a hard look at, does the mission of the company that I'm working for, does that really justify everything that I'm giving up in terms of time and quality of life? And I guess, Microverse obviously has a great mission, and it sounds like the financial side is coming together. Would you say that the recent trends have almost accelerated your ability to capitalize on that opportunity?
So on the opportunity side, for sure, we have seen an explosion in the adoption of remote work, and not just domestically. So companies in the US, because of COVID, they decided, okay, let's start hiring people remotely within the US. It's a no-brainer. But then to realizing, well, if it's in the US, why not also in Mexico? As long as they speak good English, then why not? And the jump from that to multi-time zone, across the ocean, it takes a little longer, but it's happening. And that has sparked way more people wanting to get this kind of education. And we have a very unique approach that is specific for international remote work, but also a massive peak on the number of companies that are for the first time now hiring remotely and internationally, because it increases their talent pool size massively, gives them much more diversity, and they face less competition than if they were just hiring in the Bay Area, for example. So on that side, for sure. Then on the team side of things, I think this year has been super, like this past few years have been super interesting. And it's neither bad nor good. It's both, like most things in life. What I've seen is a lot more people asking themselves, as you said, what do I really want from life? What do I value? I think this pandemic has been amazing, pushing us and forcing us to have to ask those hard questions. And it's not just, chasing the carrot. It put us in such a bad and comfortable place that it forces us to have to face a lot of those fears and hard questions. Now, I've seen a lot of team members at Microverse, but also in all the other companies struggling. And I think that's what's driving this big resignation phenomenon. But on the other hand, looking at the mission side of things and the culture that we have built as a company is what has allowed us to retain people that I think most other companies would have lost because of all these philosophical changes that are going on in our minds. But then there are signs, for example, there's some research that mission-driven organizations tend to have higher rates of burnout, for example, because you care so much about your job and you don't want to, you are grateful, appreciative of that, but also you feel bad, like you're letting people down if you stop doing your job, so you don't want to quit. And it's interesting that over the past 2 years, my job, I would say, other than the obvious things that a CEO does, like, securing the capital, setting the right vision, and, continue nurturing our culture, a lot of my work hasn't been on, pushing people harder, but actually to help people be kinder to themselves, to be more empathetic with themselves, to, not take things so seriously and understand that we're optimizing our energy for the long term and not just for the short term.
I think that approach makes just a lot of sense. And I feel like too, there's been recent trends towards just putting more of an emphasis on people's mental health and wellness. And I wanted to go back too, because you were talking about, it's almost like the people who really buy into the mission of what they're working on tend to get burnt out faster, like you said, because you just care so much. What advice would you have for entrepreneurs who are obviously very invested in just the mission and the success of their businesses for trying to keep that balance and still being able to put the foot on the gas pedal and drive growth, but also make sure they don't burn themselves out?
Look, I have a very different approach, I think, than most entrepreneurs, where I value my present joy much more than my future joy. And I truly have chosen a company, as I said before, where I can count on the present joy of the work that I do, so that I don't depend, my happiness doesn't depend on what can happen in the future, right? And that means that if we get to change the world as we're trying to do it, that's going to be amazing. But if we don't, it's okay, because I will have been doing the things that I wanted to do anyway, right? So it's like, make every day be the way you want to be spending your life. Don't do things today just because of some potential, outcome. And again, it's great to be ambitious. We have a super ambitious team, but that by itself, I don't think it's enough, because, statistically speaking, most startups will fail. So if you are defining success that way, if you're letting, the big media titles, define what success looks like, you're setting yourself up for failure, and life is too short for that. So I think it's important, and this depends on, different people will have different definitions of life harmony and work-life balance, whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's important to spend time with family, with friends, with my dog, with my wife, doing things on myself, playing games, reading, doing all the things that give me this sense that every day I'm enjoying it. I'm living it fully. And job, especially when you're a founder, has this capacity like a gas to expand and take all the space you give it and all the time. So you need to put limits to the hours and the way you work. And I have strict rituals with my wife so that we don't pass 6:30 p.m. so that we don't work on the weekends. Of course, there are exceptional moments where you have to do it, but those are the exceptions. And there is a process to make those exceptions. They don't happen without us noticing that. So that's what's been working for me, but it will depend for different people, I guess.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the research backs it up too. I actually just completed a kind of a mindfulness boot camp in the last quarter. And one of the things they talked about is that, when you're going for achievement, it's it's dopamine that's being released in your brain every time that you achieve a new goal. But it's almost like your body adapts to that dopamine hit, and you've got to constantly strive for bigger and bigger accomplishments just to get the same hit that you were getting with the smaller ones. But the types of activities that you describe, where it's just being present, or just spending time with people you love and care about, or doing things you enjoy just for the sake of doing them without like a set schedule or a goal, that releases the serotonin chemical, which is kind of a contributor to happiness and just overall feelings of well-being.
Absolutely. And it's, looking back, I remember with my first company, and this was 13 years ago, I remember the idea of raising a $1.5 million Series A was like wow. And we just raised like 12 millions and a half in our last round. And I feel like it wasn't, enough. And I think that's such a, unfortunately, natural human condition where, as you said, it will never feel like enough if your success or your happiness depends on the next thing that you want to achieve. So again, it's great to have those goals. It's not great, in my opinion, to let those goals be the condition for success and joy.
Completely agree with that. And I guess I would say too, then, outside of just health and wellness, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have a tendency to just try to do too much, to try to, they've got the vision and they almost try to keep things to themselves and execute. What's your perspective on just being able to delegate and the right time for delegating? And do you think that those people need to be kind of employees and part of the company, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a great question. And I feel like I'm learning about that every day. So I'm sure my answer in 6 months will be a much better one. But, we just grew the team from 20 people to 50 in 3 or 4 months. Wow. And that means that you delegate or you delegate, right? There is no other option, because, there is so much to do, so many one conversations. And then there is a massive opportunity cost of not delegating, because you have all these smart people you're attracting to join your team for a reason. So I think that's an important practice as a CEO, as a founder, is to let go, right? And to not expect things to be done the way you will do them. But I've learned that the way you manage that change, the way you do change management as you delegate, it's also important. So for example, we have had cases where we had people who had joined the company maybe 2 years ago. So they're very seasoned when it comes to understanding how the company works. And they were switching to a different role. And they were hiring and onboarding the person that was going to replace them in their current role. When that onboarding process wasn't followed through thoughtfully, then the metrics failed. When the person understood that they were able to move to do something else, but that first they needed to set the new person up for success, it's been amazing, because you can support the team member with the more tenure to continue growing in new areas, and you are setting up the new person to be successful, and you feel like you can delegate. So it's empowering the people that is not just you, but the people who have been in the company, retaining that talent and helping them grow, but also having strong sense that we're all together in this, that if you move to something else and you don't take care of what you were doing before well, then it works so much better when you pay attention to that. So there are ways of retaining the talent in your company as you grow. There are obvious ways of delegating, but you have to be thinking thoughtfully about the process for onboarding the people that you're going to be delegating to.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Would love to dive in more on this, but I know we're coming up on time here. I guess I did want to give you a chance. Do you have any kind of final thoughts or words of wisdom or advice you'd like to share with the audience?
I think, I want to repeat it again, because I feel like it's not said often enough, and it is, the future. And even from the financial side of view, right? Capital today, or money today, is worth more than money tomorrow, right? There's a cost of capital there. So it's the same thing happens with time. Time today is worth so much more than time tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow. You don't know if there's going to be company tomorrow or money tomorrow. So it's give today a lot of value, because that's the only thing you can count on. And again, I know I'm not saying anything new here, but we spend so much time bombarded by the messages of what success should look like. And those are the exceptions. And many of the people who are successful by that definition, they're completely unhappy. They are burnout. They are experiencing a lot of things that actually have nothing to do with success in life, in my opinion. So it's like, the only thing you can count on is today.
I completely agree with that. So, well, Ariel, it's been great having you on. If people want to learn more about yourself or Microverse, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, for Microverse, it's just microverse.org. That's our website. But I'm usually spend time on Twitter. I engage with anyone who, sends a message or, of any kind. So like twitter.com/Ariel Camus. That's my username there. And I would love to, help with anything I can.
Well, that sounds great. And I wish you and the Microverse team the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Take care.
You too.
What a great talk with Ariel. He had a lot of great insights, but there's 4 key takeaways from the conversation that I wanted to take a moment to highlight here and talk about ways that Flight Financial could help. The first thing that Ariel talked about that I wanted to call out is the importance of working capital management and cash flow management, and just how challenging that can be for small businesses. A recent study by US Bank actually stated that up to 82% of small business failures are due to poor cash flow and working capital management practices. Flight Financial can help here. We can help you implement strong budgeting and forecasting practices, which will give you visibility into your working capital and cash flow trends, allowing you to almost foresee the future and be able to plan accordingly for any potential issues in order to adjust and keep your business on track. The other thing that Ariel talked about that I wanted to call out is the importance of knowing who you can help, of being really focused as a small growing business. As a small business, you've got limited time, energy, and resources. Flight Financial can help here by implementing robust monthly financial reporting, complete with budgeting and forecasting. We can give you visibility into your resource allocation, help you realize the return that your current allocation is earning you, and help you talk through and think through whether it makes sense to shift things in order to optimize the value for your business. The next thing that Ariel talked about that I wanted to discuss here is the importance of delegation. Ariel said that it's essential for growing businesses to be able to delegate. And if you're unable to delegate, you won't be able to scale. That there's a massive opportunity cost to not delegating. And of course, one way that you could solve this challenge is by delegating your tasks to your current trusted employees. Or if you don't have trusted employees that have sufficient bandwidth, you could also try to hire new employees and train them up to take on these tasks. However, especially in our current labor market, this can be challenging. Or even if you're able to identify and hire good people that you want to work with, the pace at which you're able to do so as an organization might not keep pace with how fast your company is trying to grow. Well, this is an area where Flight Financial can also help. We've got over 15 years of experience. We've got a team in place. We've got robust processes that have already been tested, and we've worked with similar businesses just like yours. We're a monthly recurring service, and once you sign up with us, we can get up and running right away and help you out with these challenges, taking these key financial tasks off of your plate and freeing you up to focus more on running and optimizing your business. The last thing, and probably the most important thing that I wanted to call out here that Ariel spoke about, is the time value of personal well-being and fulfillment. Life is short, and our well-being and fulfillment today, it's so much more valuable than just the promise of having those things tomorrow, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And this is also an area where Flight Financial can help. We can take on these key bookkeeping and financial performance management tasks. We can take them off of your plate, and we can free up your time and give you peace of mind that these tasks are being well handled by experts so that you can focus on activities that add more personal fulfillment and value to your life. I hope this has given you great food for thought. I hope you really enjoyed the interview. I know I certainly appreciate you taking the time to watch it. I'm Brian Zaff, the founder and CEO of Flight Financial. Thank you.